It's time to take a ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive with our co-hosts, Alan Saunders and Zachary Smith.
Welcome back to an episode of Steelers Afternoon Drive. I'm Zachary Smith, and man, did Brandon sound even extra better there just because Alan Saunders back on the show. Alan, how we doing?
I'm doing great, man. Great to hear the music. Great to hear Brandon. Good to be back. Fired up. Ready to go.
Vacation. Alan back from vacation last week in Hollywood, Florida. Did not link up with Antonio Brown. I asked prior to recording, but
yeah, I just had other plans. I didn't really have time to make for AB.
I did appreciate that. I think it was one of the first days, maybe the first day that you were not on here. Omar was on Pat McAfee's show talking, which just happened to be at the bar that you were at. So trying to isolate completely away from Steelers stuff, and Omar Khan's still on your screen.
It happens. So I fired off an Omar Khan take and then went back to my pina colada, and it was wonderful.
There we go. Alan, now that you are back, I figured we should fire up a conversation that we've kind of had, but really spent no time talking about last week, other than if it was like a question asked. We did basically like 3 mailbag episodes last week, by the way, because of topics just not really being there, getting the crowd involved. That Najee Harris dominated the headlines last week. But receivers, we've kind of seen some now go off the board, these free agent receivers that we kind of thought I wouldn't even consider them necessarily tier 2 receivers, but Steelers still obviously having a whole of receivers, some names that we had brought up, the Michael Gallups of the world, DJ Charks of the world, those guys both signed last week. So getting very thin in terms of the free agents that are left on the board if the Steelers plan to address receiver in that fashion. Like if it were to be a fallback, if they didn't want to give up the compensation that it would take to get somebody in like a big name in a trade, the fallback options in free agency are really dwindling at this point.
Yeah, I mean, it's getting pretty bad, right? I mean, there's not really a lot of options, and most of the options that are out there are more slot type guys. I think it was like maybe 2 weeks ago, I wrote an article and I gave 5 names that I thought, could maybe be a good fit for the Steelers. DJ Chark has signed. Michael Gallup has signed. Marquez Valdez-Scantling has a meeting today with the Chargers. Is that right? Didn't they already sign one of these guys too?
The Chargers are the team that signed
Chark, and are also meeting with MVS and Zay Jones, since then was released by the Jacksonville Jaguars, is meeting with the Titans this week. Steelers seem not to be interested in any of these guys. Not saying that I entirely blame them. Like, it is not a who's who of available wide receivers, but I mean, remember when Brian McFadden promised that we were close to a deal for a playmaker, and now they're all gone. Like, maybe Michael Thomas was the one name that I put in that story that is sort of a bigger name. And look, if you look at the other wide receivers that are available, like, it's a lot of slot guys. Hunter Renfrow, Tyler Boyd, Randall Cobb, like Mecole Hardman, I think I would use in the slot. Like, I don't know where another outside receiver is going to come from.
Yeah, Odell Beckham Jr. signed as well in Miami last week.
Jalen Guyton signed this week. He wasn't somebody I brought up because he was injured last year, and I honestly kind of forgot about him. But he's not. There's
and Tyler Boyd and Zay Jones both meeting with the Titans. So if that comes to fruition for both of them, I mean, what in the world are we looking at in terms of free agency? Yeah, it would seem to be like it's Michael Thomas if Valdez-Scantling doesn't sign with the Chargers potentially, but I don't know. Like, I'm starting to get the sense that it's going to be a trade or nothing.
I kind of get that feeling, like it, or maybe they're waiting to see if somebody unexpected comes available later. Like maybe they're
that's true. Yeah,
comfortable enough with guys like Van Jefferson to go into this, off season, go into training camp and say, hey, let's see what we got. I don't think it's a disaster. But man, it's not good. It's definitely a position, like when you look at, I think you can make an argument that like number 3 and 4 actually got better. If you're talking about instead of having Allen Robinson and Calvin Austin, you now have Van Jefferson and Quez Watkins. Like, I think that's better. But Roman Wilson is nowhere near Deontay Johnson. Like, you didn't get better there. And so I think they have depth. Like, they have 3 or 4 3-4s, but they don't have a 2.
Yeah. Somebody actually asked us about like where they said Miles Boykin. They didn't say about Calvin Austin looking at last year's roster, but like Van Jefferson, Quez Watkins compared to Allen Robinson and Miles Boykin last year. That was one of the questions we got last week. And I mean, both said basically the same thing that you just did right there. But what I wanted to ask you, because you said you don't think it's a disaster, how much of it not being a disaster in your eyes is because of the specific type of offense the Steelers want to run? Like if it was a different offense, even I don't know if I would say Matt Canada's offense, but even looking like league wide, your typical NFL offense, would it be more of a disaster for you if this was the wide receiving group?
I think there's really 2 things that make it not a disaster. The first is that we've seen this offense not use its second wide receiver that much. Now, it did in Tennessee use Corey Davis. By the way, he's out there. I mean, maybe that's the option. I don't know.
Yeah, what it came out that he was coming out of retirement, and then it's just been nothing. Like,
yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's a total dart throw, and not somebody that I would like want to put, my team's future on. But like, maybe I don't know. It's worth a camp invite anyway. But like, yeah, we've seen this offense not use its second receiver that much. I think Pat Freiermuth not being like an elite blocker in an offense that wants its tight ends to be an elite blocker tells me they're going to use him more as pure receiver, and we're going to see Darnell Washington play a pretty large role. So, I mean, I look at what they had last year in Atlanta, and I see, a Drake London and George Pickens. I see a Kyle Pitts and Pat Freiermuth. I see a Jonnu Smith and Darnell Washington. And like they didn't have a number 2 receiver. Who was the number 2? I don't even like they're like 4 guys. None of them caught anything. Like it was kind of an irrelevant position. Now, I don't think that was great. I think that was by design. And Atlanta's offense was not what I would call good last year. But I think they can get by. The second part of that is I have been saying on this show and everywhere else that will let me talk for like 2 years now that the Steelers' best 5 eligibles include both running backs. I'll say it like 2 more times in a row. The Steelers' best 5 eligibles include both running backs. No matter who the Steelers sign as a free agent right now, their best 5 eligibles will include 2 running backs. Now, if they trade for Brandon Ayuk, I may amend that. But like Jalen Warren is really good. He's certainly better than any of these players that we're talking about potentially signing. So why not just use 2 running backs? So I think between the fact that they have 2 really good running backs and that we've seen this offensive scheme not necessarily lean on second wide receiver too much, I don't think it's this like, extinction level disaster that it would be in most places, but it's certainly not good. They've got a lot of, it's a big need, and they're really, I mean, I think we're almost to the point where like it's hard to see it being met with free agency. It's gonna have to be a trade, or like somebody comes available later unexpectedly, or something like that.
Yeah, that probably should have crossed my mind more than it has, the idea of them waiting to see, like, as if they were going to wait, because there's been some smoke about them waiting on a trade until post June 1, just because some of the guys that would basically have to.
Yeah, we talked about like Lockett would have to be a post June 1.
Yeah.
If the Seahawks had any ideas of trading him, there are a couple of those other guys out there too.
So like it should have crossed my mind. Maybe there would be, I don't know about the desire, but willingness to wait on receiver until we get further along. And maybe there is somebody that, becomes available down the road that is a surprise cut. I mean, we're talking about Tennessee meeting with 2 receivers. Like, is there a chance that they already move on and I'm not saying like Treylon Burks is like a solution to everything that the Steelers need.
Treylon Burks is like a top tier outcome at this point. Like, I mean, he's better than all these free agents, right? Like,
yeah. And certainly, like, so somebody in Tennessee is probably going to get cut.
Although I guess Tennessee is saying that he's not, that they would rather have Zay Jones than Treylon Burks, but I'm not sure, especially for this offense, that I would agree with that.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, like, in Houston, right? Like, there's probably going to be a decent receiver that's cut out of just the way that they've built that receiver room. So yeah, I mean, I think that that's possible too. But like some of the other names that have kind of popped up on the board, I just mentioned Houston. Did we talk about the possibility of John Mechie at all?
John Mechie, yeah, I like that one. Yeah, that's a guy who could be available. Like if he's like sixth on their
Yeah.
depth chart, like maybe they could
Mhm.
get him loose.
Yeah. But another one that Nick and I were talking about was Darius Slayton of the Giants. But he's another one that's like interesting because of the contract situation. Like it sounds like he's looking for new money added to his deal. So I mean, what do you make of that? Is he a player that is even worth trying to do something like that for?
I don't know. You know, like I don't think he's very good. Like I wouldn't want to pay a lot of money for him, and I wouldn't want to trade a lot for him. But he would be a number 2 for them right now. I mean, I think if you had plans of trading for Darius Slayton, like why would you sign Van Jefferson? It's like 85% of the same guy. I don't know, but yeah, he's better, and he would be their number 2. I don't know. Like I don't know why he thinks he needs more money. Like I mean, listen, we all want money, and I get that, but he has not been very good, and so I don't know where the you know like
Yeah, it did
where these.
become very crowded in that Giants wide receiver room though too. That's why I like thought it almost made sense for them to move on. But like from a contract standpoint, I just don't know if I can get. I don't view him that way. Like with these other guys that we're talking about that need new contracts. Like even in a case of like Cortland Sutton, who I don't think is like at the same level that he once was. I still think that he's a good player.
Full step
But
ahead
he's
of a guy like
yeah,
that.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and
Yeah.
like I could understand him looking for more than $2 million guaranteed.
Yeah,
In
yeah,
in Darius
exactly.
Slayton's case, like what are we doing?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, he had 700 yards like 3 years in a row. Like that's fine. That's a number, 2, 3 receiver, and he doesn't have that much on his contract either. But like, I don't know. It's
Yeah, he was the one that most recently got brought up in terms of the Steelers reaching out about. I mean, they've reached out about every like this is just talking due diligence. We don't know what level we're talking about with these conversations,
yeah,
which that's
right.
just Omar Khan doing Omar Khan's job. But
Yeah,
I don't know. I just feel like with as many stones that they've turned over on the receiver market, I just like in my mind, there's an addition coming in some capacity, in some way, shape, or form.
almost feels like there has to be, and that it's not going to be a free agent unless it's like some total dart throw like Corey Davis. Like I just don't
Mm.
see. Like there just has not been enough reported interest in these. Like if it's Michael Thomas, why are they waiting until like May 6th to start a conversation? Like it just doesn't seem like they've been that interested. It seems like all the interest has been on aiming higher. And look, I wrote in my story today, SteelersNow.com. I compared it like the teenagers are looking for prom dates, and Omar he's not just settling for anybody, man. He's got his eyes set high, captain of the cheerleading squad, something like that. But he's risking going stag if it doesn't work because there's going to be nobody left if she says no.
Yeah, I mean, what a comparison. Yeah, at the same time, what's he somehow nobody else is getting asked out right now on the trade
Yeah,
market. Yes.
right.
Like he's very fortunate that nobody else is pulling the trigger on asking out the most attractive, in this case, receivers. Yeah, I don't know. It's very interesting to me, but yeah, I would be if I had to put money on it at this point, I think something's gonna happen via trade as opposed to free agency, which
I
at
think so
one
too.
point.
Now, the other question that I think that brings up is at this point, is a trade only about 2025 draft picks, or would the
Mm,
Steelers consider making a
oh.
player for player trade? Like, is there a place where they're deep enough where they could make that happen?
And is that more beneficial to the Steelers? Like, do they value their 2025 draft capital more than say Dan Moore or I don't to a lesser extent in terms of value DeMarvin Leal, like somebody like that. Like, but I think uh, Dan Moore is probably I don't want to say their best trade chip, obviously, but like out of players that don't look like they're a starter right now for the 2024 team, like he's got to be up there.
Would you trade Najee Harris for a number 1 wide receiver?
I mean, yeah, yes, I would.
I would too. Maybe even like a very strong number 2 wide receiver.
Is that man? Who would
Where else
give
are
you
they? Like, okay, you mentioned Dan Moore.
yeah.
There's nowhere else. Pat Freiermuth. Like it solves one problem, but just creates another one. I don't know. Like,
Yeah.
like they then are not deep enough at tight end if they trade Pat Freiermuth.
All right. Here's this is my my cup of bias right here. I'm gonna put this to the side. I think I'd have to think about it.
Like I thought the idea is if they were going to trade Pat Freiermuth, I thought it would happen before the draft so that they could draft his replacement. Like if they were saying like, oh, we're not going to be able to sign this guy, trade him, we'll draft his replacement. That kind of made sense to me. Now I don't think it makes. You're just moving the hole over a slot. Like it doesn't do you any good. Now Najee Harris, maybe. I mean, it's putting a lot of faith in Jaylen Warren, but at least I can see.
Would they have drafted?
I can see Jaylen Warren being a full-time starter in a way that I cannot at this point see Darnell Washington or Connor Hayward, right? Like
I agree. Yeah. But would they, because they had to have, I mean, I'm sure that they'll say that the decision came down to the last minute, but you would think like they went into the draft knowing that they weren't going to pick up Najee's 5th-year option, right? So like, would they have added a back on day 3, or even as like, if they even signed a UDFA, they did sign a UDFA back, the guy out of Georgia.
Yes.
But would they have made more plans at running back or invested more into the position if Najee was a realistic trade candidate in these conversations?
You would think.
Yeah.
You would think. And I guess the other part of that is, if you're looking at making yourself short at say tight end or say running back or say tackle, right? Because look, I don't think anybody expects Dan Moore to start, but I also don't think that the Steelers would just hand Dylan Cook the number 3 tackle job either. Like I like him as a player, but he's played 0 NFL games. Like they would then need a tackle also. Like, it's not going to work. But maybe are the free agent options at those positions more attractive than they are at wide receiver right now? Logan Thomas is a free agent. Robert Tonyan's a free agent. These aren't guys that are top end starters, but they've done the job recently and done fair, at it. There are a couple of guys who have played a little bit at tackle that are still free agents. David Bakhtiari is trying to sign somewhere, just off the top of my head. Dave Questenberry it's kind of a reliable backup type. Like maybe they feel like they could get the free agent somewhere else easier than they would at wide receiver. The whole wide receiver thing is just so strange to me. Like if they thought they were going to trade Deontay Johnson, why weren't they so involved in the wide receiver position earlier? It's been a very strange offseason in terms of the way they've addressed the wide receiver position. Only drafting Roman Wilson, who really just basically just replaces Allen Robinson at this point and does nothing about the fact that Deontay Johnson's gone, and neither really do Van Jefferson, Quez Watkins. In fact, they almost have too many of those kind of guys. It's very strange. There's not an obvious plan from start to here in place. And so I think that is the part where it becomes difficult to predict what happens next.
They threw an offer out to Tyler Boyd at the beginning of free agency, which, depending on what you want to believe or who you want to believe, very far apart from what he was looking for and where the team was at in terms of his the way that they valued him. Wanted to meet with Mike Williams, but they never got him here because he signed with the Jets. And then like all this chatter about the trade market, but like nothing to really report there. And in terms of free agents, nobody else didn't meet with anybody else. There's just been no reported interest. So yeah, I mean, I'm in agreement. I'm trying to wrap my mind around what the process has been here. But like you said, they're going for broke, it seems like, on the trade market.
I think so.
I wanted to get your take on the running back stuff. I know you wrote about it, obviously, but for people on the audio video platform here, Steelers Afternoon Drive, they might not have gotten to hear what that was. So what was your feeling about the Steelers declining the 5th-year option of Najee Harris?
I think it's kind of like an un-Steelersy move based on their history, but maybe not based on Omar Khan, right? I think it really continues to show the difference between him and Kevin Colbert. The positional value is going to be something that they think is important. I think it's important. I think most of the league thinks it's important. I don't think under Kevin Colbert, the Steelers thought it was important, and I think they're changing their mind pretty dramatically here. I don't think that Najee Harris's 5th-year option was going to be an albatross, but it was not going to be a great contract. Like it wasn't. Like he's not one of the best 10 running backs in football. He just isn't. And so I don't know what they're going to do. I think they would love to sign him to a contract extension for less. I think they're okay with Najee Harris, the person, but they're not going to sink big money into the running back position. And they shouldn't have drafted him in the first place. It was a bad pick. And I think this is a fairly firm admission of that. And we've seen in this draft very specifically where the Steelers had a critical need at center and they drafted a tackle instead. And that's because that's where the positional value is. And that is going to be their North Star here is the value. And it doesn't mean that the players that you draft are better, but it gives you a lot bigger. It gives you a lot more leeway, right? Like if the Steelers had drafted a tackle where they drafted Najee Harris, and what would you say? Najee Harris is like I don't know, like 10 to 15 running back in the NFL, something like that. I don't know. Like maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I would say more like 15 to 18, probably.
Okay, 10 to 20 then. Let's just say that, okay? If you drafted a 10 to 20 tackle, you would 100% be picking up his option. And you would 100% be trying to sign that guy to extension. Because and you would have gotten great value for that 10 to 20 tackle over the last 4 years. But at running back, it's not the same, right? And so you obviously you're not drafting anybody hoping they become the 20th best player in the league at their position. You draft them because you think they could be great, right? You're hoping that they're the best. But it gives you a much more significant fallback where if they're not the best, they're just one of the best, or they're just better than average, then you still get the value when you draft premium positions highly that you don't when you go with running back. And the same thing applies to safety. You can say the same thing about the Terrell Edmonds pick, right? Now that one was more obviously a reach, I think. But it's same thing about Devin Bush, right? We're trading up for a linebacker, not a premium position, right? Like there's really, and honestly, they traded one for Minkah Fitzpatrick, not a premium position either. Now they got the benefit there of the fact that they had been able to watch him play in the NFL and had an idea that he might be actually very, very good. But really, that was 4 picks in a row they used on non-premium positions, and it kind of showed with the results. Like that was not the best drafting they did. And look, they went premium positions in 2022, and it doesn't look like that's going to turn out to be a great draft class either. It is not a foolproof thing, but it gives you a lot more leeway than if you get it wrong at non-premium positions. And so I think that's the way they're going to go.
Yeah, I mean, I fully agree. It sucks for, I actually think it's good for Najee. I mean, to me, to hit the running back market, assuming that he doesn't sign an extension, just hits free agency a year earlier as a running back, I think that's huge to hit free agency a year earlier. Now, what kind of money is he going to get on the open market, and what does that look like? You said about like they would love to extend him for the right price. That's where I think it gets a little bit tricky, just because I go back to, when the whole paying running backs thing was like huge a couple of years ago. They were having the Zoom meetings and stuff like that. He was like very vocal about running backs getting paid. Like, I'm not saying he's going to reset the market or anything like that, but I think he's going to get as much juice as he can out of it. So I don't necessarily see him being the type to take a team-friendly contract with the way that he talked during those conversations.
I would agree with that 100%. I do not expect Najee Harris to take an overly team-friendly deal just to get something done. My expectation now is that he will go into this year without a contract.
Yeah. That's what I fully expect too. And it's just going back to what you said about the pick, like still getting backlash for that take. I mean, I agree with it fully, but it's like not about Najee necessarily. Like they drafted him in the first round with the state of the offensive line the way that it was, really the state of the team the way that it was at that point, and basically said, fix the running game on your own. Yeah, as a running back, and so despite that,
and then after doing that and admitting that was a bad strategy, a guy who was an undrafted free agent has a higher yards per carry than him 2 years in a row.
Yeah,
which just goes to show that like not only is the value not there at the position, like it's the evaluation is pretty hit or miss. Like the part of the running back value thing that makes running backs singled out is that you have a lot of very productive running backs in college football that do not translate their game to the NFL,
Mm-hmm.
and it seems like it's very sporadic. Like it does not seem like it is an easy position to make the transition to, where some guys do it and some guys don't. And like go watch Jaylen Warren in college and tell me that you think that guy's better than Najee Harris at Alabama. You're lying to me. Okay, but I think he's been better with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Like, and so like it's hard to make the projection, and so teams miss, and so there are good players available all over. At look, you got a hit. Like the Steelers used a bunch of mid-round picks on Benny Snell and Jalen Samuels, and like those didn't really work out.
Anthony McFarland,
right? They tried, it didn't work. So it's not like it's just saying like, oh, we'll just get one, but it adds to it at the running back position, where not only do you have this position of decreased value, but it's a difficult draft evaluation. And there's no guarantee that the guy you take in the first round is going to be better than the guy you could get as an undrafted free agent or later in the draft.
Absolutely. All right, let's get to a couple questions here. I really like this one just because it's topical. My guy Ross coming in here. What Steeler player, current or all time, would be the best to roast? The roast of Tom Brady being on Netflix last night obviously is the reason for this question, which, by the way, I think it's worth the time. Like, it's like 3 hours long, but it is hilarious.
I saw some clips on social media today, and I've enjoyed what I've got. So
it's like you see sides of people that you wouldn't expect to hear the things come out of their mouth.
Bill Belichick being funny, which is something that every person that I've ever talked to that played for Bill Belichick has told me that he's hilarious, but he's never showed it publicly. So like that part was really cool to see.
I will say, and they will throw this warning out there as well when you watch, viewer discretion is certainly advised. Some of the things they joke about.
I mean, if you're not familiar with watching the celebrity roasts, it's no holds barred. Yeah, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
So, which Steelers player would I want to roast? It's got to be somebody with a good sense of humor themselves. Because otherwise they're going to like take it personally, and it can't be
like Ross said. Antonio Brown, absolutely not. He would not take well to a roast of himself.
No, and also it's almost too easy. Like you want to roast someone like Tom Brady, where like, look, I mean, you're not going to make fun of his playing career, right? Like, I mean, what? I mean, I guess Eli took a little shot on X today that was pretty funny, but like, not too many people got one over on Tom Brady, the football player, right? Like, you got to find, you got to work at it. That's a really good question.
Current, my mind goes to Cam. I think that
Cam would take it. Cam would take it well. There's honestly limited material there. Like, I don't know what I mean. You can make fun of him for being old, which like as a football player he is, but it only goes so far. And it fits though, because Cam is one of those guys that was like old at 12. I feel like also, but I don't know. He's not a guy that you can really pick on a whole lot. As far as like recent former Steelers, because those are the ones I know, like people that I think Juju would be pretty fun. Like, I think you could have some fun with him, and I think he would take it well. All I can think of is bad answers. I can't think of any. Like,
I know, like, yeah. Did you cover? When did you start covering the team? Like, was Kiesel still? Was he at the end, or was he?
No, he was gone. Like, that seems like that might be it, but I just don't know that there's. You almost need somebody that like you can make fun of more obviously. I don't know. Oh, now I've got the answer. And he would not take it well at all, but him not taking it well might be the best part of it. The answer is James Harrison. And not because he would take it well. It's because I want to see how brave people would actually be to say things about James Harrison in front of James Harrison. That would actually be the funniest part of it. Would not be and look, there's things about James Harrison you can certainly pick on. I think that's my answer. Is that I think James Harrison would be like, because like I've talked to a lot of these guys. I could make fun of a lot of these guys. We want to have Pat on the show. Like I could make fun of Pat. Okay. Like, and I'm not saying like that because like, well, Pat couldn't kick my butt, because he could, but like, Like I could do that. I would not make fun of James Harrison under any circumstances at all, even now, like let alone when he was playing. No chance. So I think that's the one I would want to see the most. And also I'm just going to throw this one out there because I think there's a lot of material to work with. I think a roast of Duck Hodges could be fabulously entertaining. Okay.
Yeah.
Just you got so much there. I just think there's a lot to work with. And I think he also is a guy that has had a very good sense of humor about the way his life has gone. And so I think he would play along and it would be
he was playing with house money. Like,
right. And he knew it. He was playing with house money from day one and he knew it. And he played like he was playing with house money. So that's why people loved him. But those are my two options. I think James Harrison, for very different reasons, James Harrison and Duck Hodges.
I like that. I can't think of a good answer. That's why, like, if it had to be current, I guess Cam. But like you said, you'd really have to know him to like dig for things that you would make fun of. Like you'd have to be in all time. I mean, I said Kiesel, but like I'm just trying to think of somebody that with some personality. I like the Harrison one. I don't know. I'm gonna go with those two just because.
I think that's Harrison is to me the one that I would like. I'd be like, oh, I gotta watch this. Like that would be the one where like you have to tune in to see this because who knows what's gonna happen. AB would be who knows what's gonna happen, but like everybody's been piling on AB on social media for 5 years already. Like the jokes are old. Like I don't know. I don't know that you can. It's not as much fun.
We had two people ask us basically the same thing. It's about one of our guys, so I feel like it's necessary to talk about this. Matt and Captain Hindsight, which by the way, love the name, both asked about the linebacker rotation because they're curious as to what role Payton Wilson might play in 2024.
I think Payton Wilson will be a situational pass down linebacker. Much the way that you saw maybe like Keanu Neal used at the beginning of the season last year, maybe working on the dime package and heavy special teams. And then if Patrick Queen needs a break, that's your guy. I don't see him being an every down player this year, but that could certainly change going forward.
Could he be somebody that sees a lot more time in games against more mobile quarterbacks because of his ability to QB spy?
Mobile quarterbacks and teams that play with like very specific kinds of offenses, I think yes. For example, like I think he could play a lot against the Ravens because of Lamar. But
that's
also
the one that like I was
Andrews, right? And so like it's like a twofer, right? Like that one makes sense to me. Although the Ravens run the ball a lot, and
that's what I was to say. Against them, though, you kind of have to like. You would also expect to see a lot of a Landon Roberts in that game. So, like, how do you?
Well, but like you're not going to want a Landon Roberts on the field on 3rd and 8.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
But they still use a lot of Andrews and Lamar running the ball on 3rd and 8, right? Like they're a team that will still run like 1st and 2nd down plays on 3rd down because their personnel is so good at it. And so I think you have to be worried about that. Certainly there are some like Cincinnati looks like a bad matchup. Cleveland, maybe you could use them against Njoku. I could see that working. I think it will be matchup based, and we'll see how the schedule plays out because they're not going to want to play him a lot early in the season, I imagine. And then we'll also see how healthy Cole Holcomb is. I mean, they may need somebody like. E-Rob's not going to want to play 100% of the snaps, I'm sure. So they're going to need somebody in there to give those guys a break. And if Holcomb is not ready at the beginning of the year, maybe that will be Wilson. We'll see.
Sure. Okay. I want to get one more here, and I'll paraphrase this to make it shorter. But Fax Mob, regular.
This one I want to get to too, so we'll make these quick. All right, but go ahead.
Okay. Fax Mob basically said he thought it was strange team building to have so many guys on 1-year contracts. Nick and I brought this up last week, but Ross and Fields right now only here for 1 year. Najee Harris, obviously now just this year. Jalen Warren, RFA at the end of the year. Most of the receiver room, Pat Freiermuth, James Daniels, like the list goes on and on with guys that 2024 is their last year on contract. What is your thought about that and just kind of the way that this is built?
I think, look, when you're throwing darts, it doesn't make sense to tie yourself to any of those long term, and that's what they're doing at quarterback. And so I don't think the fact that Wilson and Fields are on 1-year deals is unusual. I think I might have preferred to draft someone instead of signing Kyle Allen, but it's a minor quibble. Like I don't think it matters that much. Just so you would have some continuity if you decide at the end of this year that you don't like either of those guys, which by the way is a possibility, not only a possibility, but the chances that the Steelers go through this season and at the end of it decide that both Russell Wilson and Justin Fields stink and don't want either of them for any amount of money next year is I don't know, 1 in 3. It's not like that's a crazy outcome, right?
Yeah.
Both of their last teams just decided that they stank and they didn't want them. So it's not like that's a wild outcome that we should completely discount, right? So I don't see any advantage to the Steelers to tying themselves to either of those guys. In terms of running back, Jalen's an RFA. They'll tender him. I don't think there's an unusual number of players entering their final year of their contract. I expect them to get something done with some combination of Pat Freiermuth, James Daniels, and Cam Hayward through the rest of this offseason. Figure out something for those, at least 1 or 2 of those 3 guys, if not all of them. But I don't think it's. Didn't they have Najee and no? It was Minka and Deontay at the same time 2 years ago. They don't have anything like that, right? So I don't think it's. I don't think it's anything to be concerned about.
Yeah, the number on the offense when you look at on the surface, but then when you start thinking about it like that, how you just put it, I don't think it's ridiculous that this is the way that they're going about things. I certainly am fully okay with them not handing out an extension to either one of the quarterbacks right now before seeing either of them take a snap within the offense. What was the last one you wanted to get to?
A dime to Deontay, who needs a new.
Oh man,
sorry, Aiden.
Panthers fan.
Yeah, he asked any UDFA besides Beanie Bishop have a chance to make the roster, and I think that's an interesting question. There aren't that many of them, right?
Right. Yeah.
And so I think, and I'm gonna butcher the pronunciation here because I've not done my homework and learned it. But is it Daijun Edwards? Dawan Edwards? I don't know.
I thought it was Dawan, but I'm not entirely sure. So
Dejan.
Okay.
Dejan says the Georgia media guy. Dejan.
Okay.
Dejan Edwards. I think he has a real chance. The Steelers have kept 4 running backs in the past. Cordell Patterson is gonna make the team because he's a special teamer, but I'm not I don't think he's so good at running back that he can't be beaten out. And Edwards is a weird guy because he's really productive. And when you look at the tape, he doesn't look that bad. And then he just tested horrifically. And so you kind of have to wonder, I don't know, was he healthy? Was he, not prepared for something? I don't know. But I think there's more to him than meets the eye when you're just looking at the RAS, for example. Go turn on the tape. It's not like he runs like me out there. He gets around just fine. And so I think he's someone that they could absolutely keep 4 running backs. They have in the past. He is the 4th running back. I don't even know if there's really is there even anybody else? That's the whole roster, right? Is that they signed some Aaron Shampklin as a first-year guy out of Harvard. That's it. There's nobody else. And so I think he's certainly in a position on the depth chart where he could make some noise to make the roster.
Imagine if we did a Najee Harris trade.
Then he would certainly be in there.
Well, it's like you said, productive, but big time program too. I think he is the one. Outside of Beanie Bishop, that if I had to pick somebody that was going to make this roster, it's him. Maybe you have people trying to make Plumlee the next Taysom Hill. I don't know, but I think
Plumlee to me, straight to the practice squad. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. You're interesting. You're interesting enough to keep around, but I can't see how he makes it onto the first week roster unless somebody gets hurt. Somebody gets hurt, he certainly could at that point. And then Westhoff is German and will take the practice squad spot, the 17th practice squad spot. So he'll make the practice squad. He hasn't played very much college football, so TBD on whether he can play pro football. But you will see him around for a while anyway.
Sure. So there you go. I think Edwards is the answer for both of us. But if we were able to include Beanie Bishop, I would have him, because right now,
yeah, I mean, Beanie Bishop could start.
Yeah,
him or Josiah Scott, like one or the other.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. All right, good stuff. We appreciate the questions. Keep those coming to X or the comments of this video, or however you want to get them to us. We will get to them, so keep those coming. But Alan, until then, tell the people they can find you
at a Saunders_PGH on X, all the rest of the social medias, SteelersNow.com. Like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Hit that bell for notifications. Got some more plans. We're working. We're going to get some more stuff going on as we get through this off season and get into the 2024 season for the YouTube channel here, besides just me and Smitty every day. And the people want more, and we're going to give it to them.
There we go. Alan already told you what to do with the YouTube channel, but I'll reiterate: like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Like I said, hit us in the comments with your thoughts on anything that we talked about. Leave us a 5-star review and subscribe if you're listening somewhere else, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast from. We could be found there. You can find me everywhere, Zachary Smith, PGH. For Alan Saunders and myself, thanks for jumping in. Take another ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive.